everyone, it's Ross Anderson here from the Australian and New Zealand Boutique Wine Show, and we are here with episode number 5 of Meet the Boutique Winemakers. This is the trophy edition, of course, that we've been running and filming this week and for the next few days. And so, yeah, busy times for us in the office. But we ran the 2020 ANZ Boutique Wine Show in the last couple of weeks, and given the impact of 2020 and all the factors preventing us from doing it, we managed to pull it off. And we had amazing participation from across Australia and New Zealand from the small winemakers. Now, the Australian and New Zealand Boutique Wine Show is celebrating 25 years of supporting the small winemakers of Australia and New Zealand. And as always, the aim of these interviews is to inform, entertain, and educate you on all things boutique. Share the stories and the personalities behind these wine brands, which are the heartbeat of Australia and New Zealand. Now, on to today's interview. Today, we're talking with an icon of the Riverina. The Fiumara family immigrated to Australia in the 1950s and set up a business selling fresh fruit and vegetables. Robert Fiumara, one of 7 brothers, developed an extreme love for winemaking, and from there on, the die was cast. 1982 marked the first release of a Lillypilly wine, which immediately struck gold and trophy at Royal Sydney in 1983. And 1,000 awards plus later, the rest is history. Now, we are delighted to have Rob joining us this morning all the way from Leeton in country New South Wales. And here he is. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
G'day, Ross. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction, and thank you for running the show. There's not many shows that will run this year, and we're so pleased that you ran the show, and we were pleased to be able to enter. Thank you.
And Rob, you've been part of the Australian New Zealand Boutique Wine Show for as long as I can remember, when I was working in it and working alongside it. That's been the last 10 to 12 years. I've always seen Lillypilly wines pretty much every single year.
Yeah, I think we've tried to enter in every show right from the beginning, because we are a small producer, a boutique producer, and so we qualify for entering the show. Yes, we've been around for 38 years, and some years I think we forgot to enter. I'm sure every winemaker's the same. We're fairly busy, and some years we've forgot to enter and missed out, but when we've remembered, we've entered every single year. So, and we're very pleased with the way our wines have performed over the years. So thank you, Ross. Yeah,
you're definitely an anchor brand, for want of a better word, with the show, and we've got a couple of others, and they dotted around Australia, and we always love seeing Lillypilly. But Rob, what I wanted to ask you, what impact did the lockdown have down in Leeton for the industry and for you in particular, and did that change anything that you did in your daily operations?
Yeah, well, we basically were in the middle of harvest when the lockdown happened. Basically, we weren't too affected because we're a little bit isolated out here. We're a long way from anywhere, but and we only use our own grapes. We didn't have to deal with growers or people coming into the winery, so it was pretty simple. We just kept on doing what we normally do. We harvest our grapes and made the wines. And the only effect was we couldn't do wine tastings for a while. I think the first time that we could do wine tastings again was in June. The June long weekend, we were able to do tasting where people had to sit down, and we found that format worked well for us, and I think we're going to keep that format where people are sitting down and we present the wines to them. So even though it was a bit of a big change for us when we started doing wine tastings at the cellar door in that way, it really worked well for us. The other effect has been really, the main concern for us has been our biggest customer, which is Qantas. We've been in Qantas first class, business class every year for the last 12 years or more. And obviously, because it's in the international flights that most of our wines are served, and because the international flight stopped, we are concerned now what's going to happen next. When will they fly again and need our wines? And also a few of the restaurants we supplied, but we mainly sell our wines directly to customers from our cellar door and our mailing list, our membership system. But we noticed restaurants stopped buying. I think we were not in too many liquor shops, so I think if we were in liquor shops, we might have found a bit of a boost of happening with sales. But we were mainly in restaurants, and we were supplying people like Qantas. But other than that, we've managed to go through this period pretty well. We haven't had too many issues, but other than those big clients like Qantas, and we also have supplied other airlines. I think we've supplied American Airlines first class and KLM via a company in Napa Valley that supplies them. So we are concerned about that because we are only a small producer. We only use what we grow on the property, and that's been the intention of the winery, to plant the grapes, make the wine, and only sell wine that we grow and make on the property.
As we like to call it, the true definition of a boutique winemaker and wine estate.
Yes, that's right. we only crush, depends on the year, between 100 to 200 tons a year, and that's basically been our philosophy, is to make the best we can from what we grow on our property and to express what the Riverina can produce. And like you mentioned earlier, the Tremolon was our first wine. We were just over the moon about winning the trophy at the Sydney Royal Easter with our unique blend. Tremolon was a name that we made up ourselves, Traminer or Gewürztraminer and Semillon blend. We made up the name Tremolon, not expecting it to win the trophy and gold medal at the Sydney Royal Easter. And then it was written up in the national papers and put us on the map pretty quickly. But I suppose it's nice when you aim to make the best you can and actually get the results that quickly was a bit of a surprise to us.
And Robert, do you think consumer confidence is returning after the last 6 months? Do you think it's starting to go back up on the increase, or is that a factor of running into the festive season, or you're not too sure?
Look, I think consumer confidence has been... We found as soon as the wine tastings were able to happen again in the cellar door, there was a bit of a mad rush for people to come out to the cellar door and try the wines. I think people have been in lockdown for a while, and they really appreciate doing these new things, like going to do a wine tasting at a winery. I don't think that we've noticed a decline in consumer confidence. I'm pretty sure it's more for us. Like I say, it's more when the international flights start happening again, and that we can supply our wines to the airline business that we supply. But we've found a lot of enthusiasm for people coming in the cellar door. They get to try our small range of wines. We make about 12 different wines. From the dry whites and dry reds through to our botrytis and our late harvest style and our botrytis style of wines. And the new format that we're using has been working really well. The other thing we did do, my daughter was who's studying winemaking. She was studying to start with at Adelaide Uni, and she was in Napa Valley. Not Napa Valley, at UC Davis near Sacramento, and she was an exchange student with the course there, and she had started about 2 months and planning to be there at the beginning of the year. She actually had to come back home because of COVID, and during isolation, she because we weren't able to do wine tasting, she actually came up with the concept of a masterclass kit that we developed during that COVID time, which was a pretty amazing way of getting our wines out to our customers that couldn't come to visit the winery. So she actually came up with the concept of developing online videos. we've developed 3 videos for each of the 6 wines in the pack, where we go through and describe the winemaking. We also suggest 3 different recipes. My daughter also talks a little bit about wine tasting. So it's a really casual sort of masterclass thing that we've developed, and it's been very successful. So it's something that's come out of COVID that's very interesting. And because it's been so popular, we're still selling it now. People can buy the masterclass kit. They get all the links to the videos online, and they can go through each of the wines at their leisure when they want to learn more about our wines.
I think that's a trend that I think is a good thing. In what we've noticed is sample packs, so small format bottles, 100 ml, 120, 150 ml, that don't replace the bottle, but they act as a lead into the bottle. And my other business imports from South Africa, and we trialed some tasting kits. And so we had 6 bottles of 100 mils shipped in, they air freighted them in, and then we did a masterclass in Sydney, but we sent them all out to their homes, and everyone dialed into Cape Town and met the winemaker virtually, and they did the whole thing, and it worked beautifully. And I think there's something there, and I'm really keen to investigate that a bit more. I know that our good friends at Revel down in Melbourne, Dan Sims, the Pinot Palooza guys, they just recently did Pinot in a can as side B, they called it, for Pinot Palooza. And I bought the kit, and I mean, it's beautifully packaged. It's 120 ml cans, I think it is. So I think there's something here. What it looks and how it looks in the next 6 to 12 months, I'm not sure, but we're going to watch that space quite closely. Yeah. But Rob, what I really wanted to, and one of the key focuses of this video is to talk about your success yet again at this year's show, the 2020 show, with this beautiful wine, the Lillypilly Noble Sauvignon Blanc 2018. I don't know how many times you've won this trophy, but congratulations once again.
Thanks.
What can you tell us about the vintage, the 2018 vintage, that may have stood out to generate and make this beautiful wine?
Well, one of the things, we've been in drought for about 3 years until the beginning of this year. So 2018 was quite a dry year, which meant that the growing season was really good. We didn't have any disease problems. And of course, we leave our botrytis wines to late in the season, and that's when we start to get the cooler weather, and we did get enough moisture out there late in autumn to develop a little bit of botrytis. So possibly it was one of the good years, because too much rain can actually cause problems and you get the wrong fungus growing. It was a perfect year for getting the botrytis on our Sauv Blanc. So the Sauv Blanc is a variety that we've been, the first time we made a botrytis Sauv Blanc was 1996, and the next time was 2002. So quite often we blend. Sauv Blanc is the grape variety we use in our Noble blend, and even our Noble harvest in the blending of the wines. So it's an important variety. It's probably the workhorse for our vineyard, because we can use it for making dry whites and making our botrytis wines. So it was a really good year. We don't necessarily want a lot of botrytis. We just want to be able to get the grapes up to around about over 20 Beaumet, which is the normal wine is harvested at, so to make a dry Sauv Blanc might be harvested about 11 Beaumet, whereas when we make a late harvest or botrytis style wine, so about 18 Beaumet is where we consider to be late harvest, good to make our sweet harvest style, which is our not a botrytis style but a late harvest style. And then to get it to the botrytis, we have to leave it even longer. We want to get the botrytis forming, and it's quite a risky business. We don't always get it every year, and we have a potential to lose all the grapes. But we get it around about 20 to 22 to 25 Beaumet, which is pretty sticky. That's why they call them stickies. They're very the grapes, the intensity of the sweetness makes the wines very thick and very hard to handle and very difficult to crush and press, and everything about this is difficult. We have to leave it and risk it. But when we do get the right conditions and we make this lovely, and we get the botrytis on the grapes, and we get just at the right time, we go out and pick it, and we end up with this, looks like very messy fungal grapes, but they produce this magic golden liquid that we then ferment into our Noble botrytis wines.
And can I ask why Sauv Blanc? What was the combination of Leeton, your site, your skill, and Sauv Blanc, and why not like a Semillon or a Riesling? I'm sure you've played around with that and you've got it right.
Yeah, so we've, like I say, originally our very first botrytis was 1984, and that was Muscat, and then we also had Riesling grapes growing, so we made a botrytis Riesling, and they were quite successful. We did really well with those varieties, but we found with Riesling being such a small berry that many years we lost it all because the berries are tiny, and we leave it on late, and quite often we're waiting for it, and then all of a sudden it's just past its peak. So, but what we did find, we have always grown Sauv Blanc in the vineyard, which we used to make our dry Sauv Blanc wine, and we started playing around with Sauv Blanc with botrytis, and like I think 1996 was the year that we made it from Sauv Blanc, and yeah, we were really pleased with the way Sauv Blanc. It ripens really well. We can get it up to about 15, 16 Beaumet by just leaving the grapes on the vines. That's just natural ripening from the vines being on the grapes being on the vine, and that leads well for the next step, which is where we leave it for another month or two longer, waiting for the right conditions for the botrytis to actually grow on the grapes, and then concentrate it from that 16 Beaumet up to 24 or 22 Beaumet. Like I say, it's very risky, but we're in the right region. De Bortoli's made it famous in 1982, and with the Semillon, but we didn't want to just repeat what De Bortoli's did. We wanted to do something different, and that's why we use varieties like Muscat of Alexandria, Riesling. We've made a botrytis Gewürztraminer. We've made a botrytis Semillon as well. We've even made botrytis wine out of Vermentino and Sauv Blanc. So we're here to try and play around with different varieties. So we're sort of, where we started from was using other varieties other than Semillon, and producing our own style, which is quite different to the Semillon botrytis style. We really didn't want to have the influence of oak in the wine. We really wanted to get the varietal flavors expressed in the botrytis wine, and that's why we used all these different varieties.
I'm going to explore that alternate varieties topic with you in just a sec, but what I would like to know, I'm a punter and I walk into Lillypilly cellar door, and you pour some of this delicious golden nectar into a glass for me. How do you describe it to me over the counter? What would you say was the flavor profile?
Oh, well, I think what we normally do, we start off with our late harvest style wines to show people what late harvest is, which is what we call a lighter sweet. And then I explain to them the next step from that is where we leave the grapes on and we get the botrytis and we intensify the flavors to another level of sweetness by getting the botrytis. And you can even tell from the color that it's a golden color rather than a lighter color. And it's the intensity, it's not so much the sweetness, but the intensity of flavor that we are looking for. And when you've got the right intensity of flavor from the grape variety that we make the wine from, that's the interesting part of these styles. A lot of people come in and say, "No, I don't drink sweet wines," but I try and encourage them to taste it, and 99% of the time, once they taste it, they know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Fantastic. Rob, tell us about yourself. Tell us a bit about your journey in wine.
As you mentioned it earlier, it's a family business, and really the only reason I'm making wine was because my mum and dad and my 7 brothers, there was only 7, there was no girls in the family. We ran that supermarket, which we've been going since 1960. My oldest brother, Dominic, was the one that inspired me to become a winemaker. He ran the liquor shop, and he was really enthusiastic about Australian wine. And he had a selection of wines in the liquor shop that was pretty amazing for a little town like Leeton. He sought out wines from all over Australia because his interest in wine. He loved, I think one of his favourite wines was from McLaren Vale area. And anyway, he just loved wine. And he inspired me while I was still at school I was interested in in chemistry and science. And he sort of encouraged me to look into winemaking. At that stage, I was going to go to Roseworthy, which was the only course that was available in Australia. And so I applied for Roseworthy while I was still in 3rd form. And then when I finished year 12, Riverina College or Charles Sturt Uni started up, which was only an hour and a half away from us at Wagga. So it was closer. It was also a degree course, whereas at that stage, Roseworthy was a diploma course. And I've been one of the first students at Riverina College, now Charles Sturt Uni. So that was exciting to be involved in the course when it first started. But it was the inspiration that my brother, Dominic, got me interested into winemaking. And then that year, when I decided to do the course, or was it that year? I was still at school. Actually, I was still at school, and Dad planted the grapes. So I basically didn't have any choice. I was committed to becoming a winemaker. The grapes were planted, and I was going to go to, I was then going to go to Roseworthy, but I ended up going to Wagga, and did my course, and came back in 1982 and established Lillypilly Winery. But it really was a family effort. It's not what I've done. It's what my brothers and my parents' foresight, really. We planned it from 1972. We didn't have a winery. We knew we were going to build a winery. We didn't plant grapes because we wanted to grow grapes. We planted grapes because we were going to build a winery. And they were waiting for me to do my course so I can come back and start making wines in 1982. So that was the beginning of my why I became a winemaker, is because of my family. And the family influence. And it's great having a large family to support you. As most winemakers know, it's not easy to establish a vineyard and establish a market. But when you've got a large family supporting you, it makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely. I think that's the same for everything, for sure. You mentioned Charles Sturt University there. That's another brand, if you want to call it a brand, that are always participating. Boutique Wines by CSU. They've been a participant for as long as I can remember, and their wines coming out are sensational. They've even won a trophy. They won a trophy a number of years ago for a sparkling, and it was just mind-blowingly good. But that was a good 8 years ago, I think it was, but I remember it fondly. So, Rob, I want to talk a little bit about Lillypilly. I'm just going to pop up a map so people can get an idea of Lillypilly. So what's that distance from Sydney to you, roughly?
It's about 600 kilometres. So it's a good 6 hours or 7 hour drive from Sydney, depending on what part of Sydney you're in. Once you get out of Sydney, it's pretty clear sailing, pretty easy to get. The roads are good, but we're about 600 kilometres, and yes, you can tell a slightly slightly south of Sydney, and we're actually closer to Melbourne than we are to Sydney. We're about 5 hours from Melbourne and about 6 or 7 hours from Sydney, in the Riverina region.
Zooming in slightly, here's the town of Leeton, and you seem to be just on the outskirts of Leeton from the look of the map, and it looks very green. And then if we dig in further, Lillypilly Estate. Now that map on that shot on the screen with the borders, with the road, is that your estate? Is that the entirety of the Lillypilly Estate?
Yes, you probably can see where the winery is there. There's 40 acres on that block, which is the original plantings. So the Cabernet and Shiraz were planted in 1972. So there's 40 acres there. Then if you go towards the right, you'll see there's a bit of a vacant block, and then at the very end there's more grapes. That's where I live. My house is on that side of the vineyard, and that vineyard was planted about 20 years ago. So that's the entire vineyard, the 40 acres, and about another 30 acres on the in between the vacant block. There's another 30 acres there. So that's our entire vineyard. There's 70 acres of grapes.
And what would you say would be the highlights reel of the last 38 years? If you were to summarize it, what's the greatest achievement you feel?
I think I always remember, the first wine, the Tremolon, winning the trophy with our first. I mean, you only get one chance to get a trophy and gold medal with your first wine. So that was definitely a highlight. The other, I suppose, once we started developing our Botrytis wines, the amount of awards we've been able to win with our Botrytis wines has been something that we've decided to do more of. We've decided to try and make more Botrytis wines. Probably the making of the 2002 Noble blend was probably our highlight in that put us on the map a little bit. We also were the first to use screw caps on our Botrytis wine. So the 02 Noble blend, which was probably 80% Sauvignon Blanc with some Riesling Muscat and Semillon blend, but 80% Sauv Blanc, was the wine that we probably won most awards with. It's won 30 gold medals and 26 trophies. That's just the 02 Noble blend. That's probably our most successful dessert wine that we've made. We've won other trophies, but we've won it for fortified wines, and we've also won it for a Vermentino, which is another variety we might talk about later. And the fact that we might have been one of the first people to put Botrytis wines under screw cap. The bottle that we used was made in France. There was no bottle with a screw cap finish on it for a half bottle. And the first wine we put under screw cap was the 2002. It also happened to be a big year. We made quite a lot of that wine. And it was the wine that really put us, developed a bit of an export business for us. We exported it to the US. Actually, someone discovered our wine in a restaurant, an importer in Melbourne, and they started importing our wines into the US. And it was the 2002 that really were able to supply to them under screw cap. And I think we're in 38 states in top restaurants around the US. So for a little tiny winery to be out there, sold our wine selling in the US in 38 states was pretty amazing.
It's amazing. Wow. And on the flip side of that, Robert, what's the biggest challenge you faced being based in the Riverina and in that location? Is there any major challenges?
I think our biggest challenge is letting people know that we're here, and that the Riverina is actually one of the biggest wine producers in Australia. I'm a tiny winery, but there's a lot of other wineries in the region that do really fantastic wines. And when you look at how they perform, they win awards and trophies all over the place. We just happen to be a long way away from, a big population, so people don't seem to know about us. Our biggest struggle is letting people know that we do exist. It's a lot easier now with the internet, and the fact that people can look us up and find us, and also we've found with COVID happening, a lot of people haven't been able to go overseas, and they've decided to travel around New South Wales, and they've discovered us through that way. So it's more a matter of being recognised. It is a very important region, and it produces a lot of great wines, and especially the Botrytis wines.
So I want to talk about Sauv Blanc, and we've already touched on it with the sweet wines, the dessert wines, but it sounds to me like your Sauv Blanc is one of your flagship varieties. Would I be right in assuming that?
Yes, it's a variety that we've been making as a dry style for quite a few years. I think it's a variety that it's a bit unusual to grow Sauv Blanc in a warmer region, but it produces a different style, a very drinkable style of wine that works really well with food. And we actually started exporting our Sauv Blanc into Canada, Toronto, by another person that really was interested in our dessert wines. But eventually he was selling our Sauv Blanc into restaurants in Toronto, and it grew from about 20 or 30 cases to about 3,000 cases a year, and only sold in restaurants. So it was a really good food wine, and it's not a Sauv Blanc style that from the Adelaide Hills or the New Zealand style. It's a very different style of Sauv Blanc, but it really produces a wine that's got lovely characters and does go well with food.
So how would you describe it then, Rob?
It's not as dry, it's not as acidic. It's quite it's more tropical fruit characters. It's got a nice cleanness about it. It's quite fresh. We pick it earlier in the season, and in fact, when we first made it, we used to pick some quite early and then later in the season, and then blend the two together. We've done that some years. Originally, that's how we were making that style. But every year is different, and every year's different climatic conditions. We try and make it not too heavy, but and not too acidic, but lots of those tropical fruit and more of the rounded characters rather than the acidic, sharp characters that you get in a lot of Sauv Blancs.
It's interesting. I'm interested in that topic on different styles of the same variety, and I see that quite profoundly in Sauv Blanc. So you can almost tell you're drinking a New Zealand Sauv Blanc, and you can almost tell you're drinking an Adelaide Hills Sauv Blanc. And then with the international businesses that I run, you can tell that you're drinking a South African Sauv Blanc because there's these unique identifiers. Here's another question then, while we're talking on Sauv Blanc. What's your opinion on aged whites? Not Riesling or Chardonnay, but aged whites like aged Sauv Blanc. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can probably say I really since we've been using screw caps, that's changed the whole thing on aged wines, especially aged whites. We're 100% screw cap winery now. We were one of the first to go to screw cap, and we were developing screw caps in '95. And before the current BVS finish was available, we were using the old style of screw cap, which had a few problems. But we were very keen to to use the screw cap, because while I was at Wagga studying at Wagga, we made the 1980 wines, which I was involved in as the Ron Potter Scholar, and I helped make those wines. We bottled under screw cap, and I knew the screw cap was a really good closure for the wine and for the aging of a wine. And we've had wines that were 20 years old under white wines that are brilliant with aging. The other thing is we've recently won a championship award with our 2002 Noble Blend, which is an 18-year-old Botrytis wine, which was the first wine we put under screw cap. And it won at the Wine Wise Awards in Canberra, which is a competition where they get all the gold medal trophy winners every year, and they put them together and judge them again and get the best sweet wine. So this year we actually won the championship sweet wine at the Wine Wise Awards, and that's with a 18-year-old Botrytis white wine. So I think they age quite well. I think that proves that they age well, and they're good even after 18 years.
Yeah, I remember a trip to South Africa a couple of years ago for business, and I was in a location called Robertson, which is inland of Cape Town, quite flat, plain area. It wouldn't be too dissimilar to your location, although there's a bit of elevation and some bordering with mountains. But they were celebrating old wines. This was 2014, and they were pouring me a 2002, 2004 Sauv Blanc. And it was different. There was still something there. The characters had changed, but there was still freshness. And I guess people think Sauv Blanc needs to be that typical young, fresh, cut grass, cat's pee, for want of a better word, typical New Zealand style. And it doesn't. It just changes. And there's nothing wrong with it. If it's made properly and it's sealed properly, versus the stigma that's going to go off, and that's it. I think it just changes. But as consumer,
I agree with you. I really think the wine does change, and it's not the same as when it's young. But I think people that are sort of going, "Oh, wines, especially white wines, we don't need to age them." I think that's wrong. I think there's in fact, with our Botrytis wines, we prefer to have a few years of age on them. They're beautiful when we first make them. In fact, this Noble Sauvignon Blanc we released earlier, and then we took it off the market, and we're about to release it now again. We find with a few years bottle age, especially the Sauvignon Blanc in our Botrytis style wine, comes to its peak. It really develops some beautiful characters that balance as well with that sweet wine style. And like I say, even 18 years later, the wines, they don't know they're judging, what year the wine is. But when you compare it with a wine that's also quite young and that's won a trophy, it's still, 18 years later, it still does well. And I think that is proof that old white wines can be great wines.
Topic I'm really interested in exploring, alternate varieties. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people over the last week or so all around Australia, and it's interesting to hear their opinion on the increase in this sector. And what we're seeing through the show systems is increase in Grenache, Mataro, and then we're seeing a lot more Italian varieties coming into the mix. You have Barbera, Sangiovese, Nebbiolos, Lagrange, all these wonderful international varieties. What are your thoughts on the future on the whites, the Fianos, the Vermentinos, the Albariños, and these reds? And is there a place for it in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, well, we've been growing Barbera here for over 20 years, but our current one, which is a 2019, was actually our first Barbera that we made on its own. Being an Italian variety, we thought we'll just make it on its own and see what we get. And the 219 was our first production of a dry red Barbera, and we were so excited with the result of the wine. It had so much lovely fruit characters from the grapes, we decided to actually release it early without any oak maturation. So 219 hasn't seen any oak at all. We love the balance of the fruit and the softness of the wine, and we're rather pleased the way it's performing at wine shows. It's won several silvers at the moment, and we think it's got a huge potential. And I think, again, it has a good, in a warmer climate, it has a good balance of acidity, but the flavours are pretty good. We're really happy with it. The other variety that we grow that's a bit more alternative is the French variety Petit Verdot. That's done well for us over the years. It's another potential for our region, and I'm not sure if you're aware that really with Petit Verdot you need to get it ripe. When you don't get it ripe, it doesn't make very good wine. Fortunately, we have a very long growing season here, and I think Petit Verdot is another potential as a red grape variety that's done well for us. I think the 2009 Petit Verdot had won 3 golds and 3 silvers. Our current one has won, several bronze awards. And the varieties that we're looking at, I think, have got a good potential because they have a lovely colour and flavour. So that's probably the two reds that I'm thinking are really a potential for our vineyard. And in the white varieties, we did make our first Vermentino in 2015. And we feel that that's another variety that works well in our region. It handles the warmer climate better. And our very first our second production, actually, 2015, we entered the show, the Perth Roll Easter show, the Perth show, the Roll show, and we actually won the trophy there for the best varietal dry white with our 2015 Vermentino. That really proved to us that that's a variety that must be good for our vineyard and our climate. So for us, there are other varieties grown in the region, in the Riverina region. A lot of the other ones that you mentioned earlier, which do also show a lot of potential. But as a winemaker, it's good fun trying new varieties and just seeing what those varieties can do under our conditions. And I think Vermentino is showing a lot of promise.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you can share with us about future plans at Lillypilly? You've mentioned your daughter doing the packs and the masterclasses. Have you got anything in the pipeline that you're able to share with us? Anything else?
I think we're trying to find, because we're such a small winery, we've been exporting overseas for over 25 years, and we don't have a big production because we only use what we grow on the property, and we want to continue to do that. It's finding a place where we can sell our wines, and things don't stay the same all the time. Those markets have changed over the years. We've gone into the airline, supplying the airlines, which has been great. I think we want to develop more our cellar door experience, as well as selling direct, continuing to sell direct to customers via a membership system. And hopefully also developing a few other markets out there. It's very tricky when you're our size. You're too small to supply wines everywhere. But I think developing the cellar door experience might be one thing, and maybe online selling direct is the future for us, and maybe developing, once the airline's going again, it's a nice little niche market for us. If we can get our wines in some really good places like Qantas First Class again and Business Class, and also a few other airlines around the world, it's a nice little niche market for us. But I'm hoping that my daughter will eventually come back and work for us, but there's no pressure there. I wanted to go out and experience winemaking and looking at other regions and countries and learn more about it. And she's always welcome to come back once she's ready. And hopefully the family tradition will carry on.
Absolutely, hopefully. Rob, if you weren't in wine, what would you be doing?
It's a hard one because I've really, right from third form, I knew I was going to be a winemaker, and I was interested in science. As you know, I love science, I love maths, and when I was studying at Wagga, I dabbled into a bit of computing. Personal computers weren't even out then. I did do a few computer courses, and I enjoyed that, and I became a bit of a computer nerd at the early stages when computers first came out. But it's all changed now. I really don't know enough about it. I have to get my kids to tell me how to run Facebook and Instagram and whatever.
Very quickly, absolutely.
I think computing might be the field that I would have pursued. It was a new thing, at that early stage, and it did allow us to start our mailing list. We've been running a mailing list since 1983. And the only reason we did that is because I did know something about computing, and we set up a database and we started mailing out. And I remember the first mail out we did from the visitors book that, people called into the winery. I think we sold 600 cases in a mail out. We thought, wow, we don't need distribution. We can sell it all by mail order. But these days, there's a bit more competition out there to sell direct. So, but I think that would be, whatever way we can find where we can get to our customer. We obviously can talk to our people that come to the winery and continue to talk to them by our Facebook and via our mailings if they join our membership system. But hopefully we'll find some other niche, position. Maybe restaurants, because we do specialise in the botrytis wines. It is a bit of a unique style, so we just have to. We're willing to sell it to anyone. We're open to anything really. So.
Rob, tell us your favourite wine memory. It doesn't have to be a Lillypilly memory. What's your favourite memory that sticks in mind? It always comes back.
Oh yeah, it's an interesting question. That we've tried quite a few wines. Probably one of the ones that goes back to when I was at Wagga, and they made a Chardonnay from Cowra region, and I remember they actually made it as an unoak style, and that's one of the wines that keeps on coming back to me, and it showed me that really you don't need to have. You probably remember the styles of Chardonnays that are out there over the years. There was a lot of the time there's Chardonnays are oaked, and you have the buttery sort of characters and that you get, and the oak characteristics. But that showed me that you can actually make wine a Chardonnay style without using oak. And I remember that wine doing really well in wine shows where from this Cowra Chardonnay that we made at Wagga. But that's probably the one that sticks in my mind at the moment. But there's been many other wines out there, and always trying to work out different angles and trying to find out a new way of making things. I like to be innovative rather than trying to stick to what's out there. I always try and look at things that are a little bit different and a bit more innovative.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah. There's many times I think I should have probably gone into winemaking, and then I think, well, I'm happy where I am. This could have been very different. I could have been in the military, but yeah, here we are, and we're talking through new forms of telecommunication. Last question for you. When you're driving around the property or you leave Lillypilly and you go into town, what's playing on the radio in the car? What are you listening to? What's your music taste?
That's a difficult one. I've got a pretty wide range of music styles that I like, and I suppose I was born in 1957, so the music I would have heard when I was a baby would have been, the 50s music, the 60s music. I particularly like, I suppose, if I had to pick one, would be, Ray Charles or I like country and Western music. That's a bit terrible to admit to, but I think
not at all. Not at all.
I think there's some of the, look, I have a wide. I love all sorts of music, just as long as it's. But I think probably my favourite would be, even Johnny Cash and Ray Charles and people like that. Slim Dusty in Australia. I mean, I love all that music. But that's about it. And that's not usually played on the radio. So I don't hear it on the radio. When I pull out,
very true. Very true. I was in Nashville a couple of years ago, and I went to the Johnny Cash Museum and the Country Music Hall of Fame, and that was just mind blowing. And it was a great experience. So it's changed my perception on country and western and all that kind of stuff. But loved it.
Yeah, no, he was great. I mean, even people like Roy Orbison and that style, they, and I love all that sort of music. Yeah. But I'm very open to listening to any sort of music. Some of it I don't like, but mostly like most of it. So.
Rob, that's it for now. I wanted to, I've been looking forward to this chat for a very long time. So thank you so much for making time to have a chat with us this morning and learning more about your beautiful region, your amazingly tasty wines, and big congratulations for this trophy. We're putting the results out on the 1st of December. So we've got a lot going on in the back office here. Apologies for anyone that heard a little dog barking or trying to bark. I've got a puppy sitting under my desk here. This is the joys of working from home, but there it is. But Rob, thank you so much for your time. It's great learning more about your region and your brand, and we hope to be in touch. I hope to get in the car and trot out your way, hopefully in the first part of next year, and have a look at. I really want to see this tip truck.
I'll try and get a windscreen for it so it doesn't deteriorate any further. But thanks for the great questions, Ross, and it's been very enjoyable, and you're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to everyone watching this, please jump onto the website lillypilly.com.au, subscribe to the socials at Lillypilly Wines on Facebook and on Instagram. And get joining that wine club, do the masterclass with Robert's daughter, and get behind these small brands across Australia and New Zealand, but particularly these amazing wines and these dessert wines. Rob, thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, Ross. That was fantastic. Thank you for the questions.
And that's it for this episode of Meet the Boutique Winemakers, everyone. We've got lots of videos coming through at the moment, so stay tuned, subscribe to the social channels, jump on the website, and we will see you with another episode soon. Until next time, stay safe and